Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid. But today is the 13th of July 2021, and these are the stories that we'll be talking about during the course of the show. We will begin with the Kashmir Martyrs Day, that is being, of course, we are talking about today because today in 1931, on this very day, thousands of Kashmiris flocked to the central jail in Srinagar to see the trial of Abdul Qadir, and there 22 Kashmiris were martyred. And since that day, this day is celebrated as the Kashmir Martyrs Day. Nothing much has changed since then as far as the plight of the people in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is concerned. They are still being subjugated to human rights abuses, the women are still being raped, the children are still being orphaned, and the elderly and the men in the region are still being subjugated to torture. We'll be talking about that in our first segment. Our second segment, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be about the Afghan pullout and the change in a geostrategic relationship of the different countries post the pullout of the US and NATO troops from Afghanistan. Now that the US is going towards China and Russia as far as its angle is concerned post its withdrawal from Afghanistan, how is it all going to bode for the regional countries, for Russia, for China, for Central Asian countries, for Pakistan, for India, for Iran, for Turkey, and for the United States of America? We'll be talking about that in our second segment. Then finally, we'll be talking about the situation as far as COVID-19 is concerned, ladies and gentlemen, the increase in positivity rate, the fourth wave that our Prime Minister Umar Saab have been talking about relentlessly, and have been saying that we need to follow the SOPs and we need to be extremely vigilant and careful because Eid al-Azha is upon us. It's going to be celebrated next Wednesday, and it's very important in this state of a fourth wave and the Delta variant of the virus that has come from India, that we need to be extremely vigilant, careful, not only for ourselves but for our loved ones as far as COVID-19 is concerned. Let's go to our first segment, ladies and gentlemen. Our first story, that is about the Kashmir Martyrs Day, that is being celebrated today since this very day in 1931. More in the following report.
Today, Pakistan is observing 90th Kashmir Martyrs Day, Yom-e-Shohada-e Kashmir, to pay homage to the 22 Kashmiris killed by the troops of Dogra Maharaja during a protest against the draconian rule of a Hindu Maharaja in the Muslim-majority state in 1931. All-party Hurriyat Conference has appealed the Kashmiris to mark the day by a complete shutdown in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and the objective of the shutdown and the march is to convey to the world that the Kashmiris will never accept Indian subjugation. Prime Minister Imran Khan paid tribute to Kashmiris on Kashmir Martyrs Day and has vowed to stand with them in the just struggle against illegal occupation by India. Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi affirmed that history stands witness that no amount of Indian atrocities and occupation can subjugate the spirit of brave Kashmiris. Kashmiris have been oppressed since 1846, when the princely state of Jammu and Kashmir was created, and despite having an over 95% Muslim population, the state was sold by the British East India Company to Hindu Maharaja Gulab Singh. The suffering has not ended despite the end of the despotic Dogra dynasty rule. The fate of Kashmiris changed for the worse, as it has been replaced by tyrannies of successive Indian regimes with various garbs of democracy. Despite intensification of violence post 5th of August by India, Kashmiris of all ages and across genders are challenging Modi's fascism today with their blood and writing new chapter of history. It is pertinent to mention that generation after generation, Kashmiris have sacrificed their lives for freedom, and today they continue to valiantly fight and defy a Hindutva supremacist regime bent on demographic engineering to wipe out the Kashmiri people and their identity.
To talk more about that, we have been joined by Dr. Waleed Rasool. He's a Kashmiri activist, and of course we are going to discuss what has happened since 1931. Has anything really changed? Dr. Waleed Rasool sir, thank you very much to have joined us. Dr. Rasool, 1931-2021. What has really changed in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir as far as these brutalities on the that are, of course, the people are subjugated to in this region?
Thank you, sir. Today I have wrote a column on it. What changed from since 1931 till date. There is some sort of we will see that the 1931, it was a quit Kashmir movement. We were fighting against the Maharaja, our elders, were having a resistance against Maharaja to quit from Kashmir, despite he was a resident of Jammu, but a tyrant. Because his forefathers had purchased, rather, the Britishers sold Kashmir, and it was the biggest sale deed in human history, 75 Nanak Shahi to Gulab Singh. And it is a laughing stock. And currently, when we say that currently Britishers say that they are the top human rights defenders. But it was a Quit Kashmir movement, and something happened in 1931, which changed the history, the course of the history. That is a person who was neither a freedom fighter nor a Kashmiri, neither he was having any links with the Kashmir. He was just a visitor who came to Kashmir, and he was sitting in a houseboat in Srinagar. And when he saw that what is being happening in Kashmir and how the oppressor, the tyrant Maharaja is behaving with the Kashmiri people, he immediately stood up in one of the processions and started his speech and told the Kashmiris that nobody can help you. You have to stand up upon your own legs, and you have to make the difference. And currently we need the same thing. We have to stand up upon our own legs, and we have to make the difference. And if you say the clinical analysis between the tyranny and the tyrant, Maharaja was a tyrant, and there is no difference between the tyranny of the Maharaja and the tyranny of the present Hindutva regime. Both are using the power, both are using the excessive power, and both are using the tools of the tyranny to continue the subjugation.
But till when will these tools be used, Dr. Rasool? Till when will the people be subjugated to this torture, to this barbaric attitude by those in power, whether it be those who were there in 1931 or by the Narendra Modi-led government? What needs to be done? What can be done?
Yeah, we have so many methods to move forward. First one, the role of masses of the Kashmir who stand against Indian tyranny, and they are continuing their struggle while paying the huge cost. Now, we as a nation, we as a supporter, we as a legal entity and a legal party to the dispute, we have to carry that pain, and we have to represent that pain without any party or the small segment interests in an international community. We have to empower our people who are sitting in various universities to build the narrative that our movement is the legitimate UN recognized movement, and we have to carry forward. We have to write some research publications where we have to put the empirical data in sequence which can represent our cause. We have to use the modern tools of the social media and the tools of the communication in post-modern world and the globalization, and we have to promote the pain of the Kashmiris. And number 4, we have to expose the brutalities of the India in those
But
circles.
Dr. Rasool, you have of course elaborated on various valid points, but aren't these points being aren't these being of course put into actions, not since now but since decades? Aren't the reports being made? Aren't the international bodies being told about what the atrocities are being committed by those in power on the hapless people in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, especially since Narendra Modi's government came into power? Aren't we telling the whole world about the human rights abuses? Aren't we telling the whole world about the right to self-determination that the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir have been striving for since decades?
No, that the country, the Hitler's philosophy-driven country, India, has military budget of $72 billion. And when you compare the sources of we subjugated Kashmiris as compared to India, it is not even a peanut. And you definitely know that what will be the situation when we are fighting a superpower and a regional hegemon and having a philosophy of this done bathe. And done and bathe is a champion philosophy who himself promotes a victim of the Kashmiri people internationally. So it is some complex frame which we have to break. Then India himself plays a victim role, that he is victimized as a state. So when we try to break this frame, it is not so easy. So it will, what the people from Afghanistan say to US, that you are observing the situation, we have the time and we will continue our sacrifices, but situation in Kashmir is entirely different. We are in the pressure cooker. We are under the 3 corps of Indian Army. We have to breathe inside the campus and the large jail of the Indian Army. So the our contribution is remarkable. It can't be compared with any movement of the world. So now what wins? Wins the resilience. Wins the how much resilience, the degree of resilience we have. Definitely. We have the limitation.
People of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, Dr. Waleed Rasool, they have had, they still have, and they will continue to have, and the struggle is going to continue, inshallah, till these people attain their right to self-determination, the right to plebiscite that has been enshrined under various United Nations constitutions. And of course, the different reports that you talked about also, whether it be the US State Department's annual human rights report or the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights 2 reports of 2018-2019, that highlight these atrocities that are being committed on the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. We consider this day as Kashmir Martyrs Day, but in fact there are so many other days when hapless Kashmiris are being martyred left, right and center in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. The world, are you listening? Our second segment, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the Afghan pullout and of course how the US is now changing its eyes and its direction as far as its geostrategic location and the geostrategic relationship is concerned towards China and Russia. How is it going to board as far as the regional or the global situation is concerned? More in the following report.
A new phase of great power competition is apparently in bloom following US President Joe Biden's decision to withdraw all US troops from Afghanistan by 11th of September 2021. After the US withdraws from Afghanistan, its rivalry with geostrategic rivals China and Russia is likely to define the new administration's approach to the region. Washington has long viewed the region through the lens of the conflict in Afghanistan, with US forces on their way out soon as the new frame of reference will likely dominate US thinking on South Asia that will seemingly focus on increasingly assertive China and resurgent Russia. Russia and China have become more proactive regional players in Afghan affairs since the start of the Afghan peace process in 2018. Additionally, China's partnership with regional countries will further define Afghanistan and the region that emerges after the US military withdrawal. In the context of the great power politics, Russia has consistently expanded its influence in Central Asia. The US troop withdrawal has further motivated Russia to expand its military presence in the region. Russia still sees itself as a regional hegemon and views the US departure as an opportunity to revitalize its role and expand its powers by building alliances in the region, particularly with China. Beijing's major interest of securing economic gains can be achieved by using Afghanistan's position as a regional connector in either the Belt and Road Initiative or China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. In order to brave these new challenges, ending forever war in Afghanistan could finally prompt the United States to play a broader geographic geopolitical frame to its policy in Asia. The US also recently imposed sanctions on Russian and Chinese officials and has eased restrictions on American officials meeting their Taiwanese counterparts. This confrontational US posture will define the contours of post-Afghan war world order.
Dr. Salma Malik, foreign affairs expert, joins us online. Dr. Saiba, it's a pleasure to have you on board for this segment. Dr. Saiba, how do you see the future regional situation as far as the geostrategic location or the situation of this very region is concerned, and how is it going to implicate the situation around the world and, of course, the relationship between the United States and different other countries? I think that there has been some kind of a technical issue. We are going to try to get back to Dr. Salma Malik. In the meantime, while on one side Joe Biden is speeding up the withdrawal of the US troops from Afghanistan, he gave the date of 31st of August as a tentative date by which all of the US troops would have left, apart from a very small number of troops that would be guarding of course, the compound, the US compound over there, but the majority of the troops would have left. At the same time, we are hearing of the Afghan Taliban and how they are, of course, entering into different areas of Afghanistan. Dr. Salma Malik, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, Dr. Salma Malik. Now that a lot of changes are happening with a lot of speed in Afghanistan, with the pullout of US troops from the country, and of course with Taliban slowly and steadily gaining control over large swathes of the area, and the US now pointing towards China and Russia. How do you see the whole geostrategic environment of the region changing in the next couple of months?
Omar, that's actually a very, very difficult question to answer, because there's so many things, as you have just encapsulated, happening at the same time. If we try to kind of understand them from the lowest to the highest grid, or from the highest to the lower grid, I mean, at max you have these different geopolitical configurations changing, and countries trying to figure out where they place themselves. America, after pulling out Akhtar,
well, there seems to be some kind of a technical issue, and we are going to try to get back to Dr. Salma Malik and get hold of her to give us her point of view as far as the geostrategic situation in the region post the withdrawal of the US troops, and of course the Afghan Taliban slowly and steadily gaining control over large swathes of areas as far as Afghanistan is concerned. How is that also going to change the relationship between the United States of America and China? We know that there have been tensions since the past couple of months between the two countries. It started with trade, and then it kind of went on a broader scale of tensions on different issues, whether it be political or otherwise, or regional control. And then also there is the case of Russia that is trying to regain its control in the region as well, and its whole, and of course its importance in the region as well. The Central Asian countries with which Russia is also talking. Also, we cannot neglect how Turkey and the United States have also been talking together about the future of Afghanistan post the US withdrawals. Afghan Taliban have warned Turkey against extending troops in their country once the US troops leave the area, while Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan had said on the 9th of this very month that Turkey and the US had agreed on the scope on how to secure Kabul airport under the control of Turkish forces. Dr. Salma Malik, can you hear us? All right, we'll be back with more stories, but after a short break. Stay tuned. Dr. Salma, Malik, United States, Russia, United States, China, United States, Turkey, United States, Iran, and US, Pakistan. Are these cooperation between these countries or the relationship between these countries going to change for the better or for the worse in the coming months?
Omar, it could entirely depend on how these countries work with each other. Pakistan will be in a very, very difficult situation because Pakistan is the immediate neighbor of Afghanistan, and any unfortunate previously whatever problems that have happened in Afghanistan have had a direct impact on Pakistan, and so does the security parameters. So Pakistan has to play it very, very cautiously, and for that we have to be very careful as to what we say, how we say, and to whom we are saying it. And not everyone in Pakistan should be the ones to be passing judgments and statements. One aspect. The second aspect is whom are we going to interact with? And I would say that our first point of interaction, besides the Afghans, this approach that we have of engaging all Afghans on the table, should be with the neighbors who are immediately bordering Afghanistan. And then, of course, then we should go for the larger stakeholders. But we should, because we have invested so much in Afghanistan in terms of diplomacy primarily, we should put our foot first and try to capitalize positively and genuinely on the coming situation.
I mean, when you talk about, looking or concentrating genuinely on the upcoming situation, what is your personal point of view as far as the Afghan Taliban gaining control in Afghanistan, and how their gaining control is going to change the geostrategic tensions that are present in the region?
Okay, to take a country-centric perspective, Omar, I would actually say that, God forbid, if things go south in Afghanistan, there are two case scenarios. One is an inclusive government. Many people are optimistic that the Taliban, this new generation of Taliban, is not like the old ones. They are not hardliners. They understand the political dynamics. There's going to be an inclusive government. Wonderful, that's great. So if there is some possibility for a dialogue between the Ghani government or the current government that is sitting in office, those who are sitting on the fringes, and the Taliban, as predicted from the Doha round that is happening on the 16th, post 16th, in which Pakistan has a very, very high investment in terms of diplomatic capital and beyond, then, and if there is a positive outcome of them, that's great. The worst case scenario is, God forbid, no political process, no consensus, no intra-Afghanistan dialogue, breakdown into a civil war. And even if there is no breakdown into a civil war, there would be fringe areas where there would be trouble and some kind of a security challenge with a perceivable IDPs or refugee spillover into Pakistan or neighboring areas. So Pakistan needs to be preemptively prepared for those things. And then we also need to talk to the immediate neighbors surrounding Afghanistan, Iran, which is also our neighbor, Central Asian countries, China, who are going to benefit or stand less beneficial from an unfortunate situation happening in Afghanistan. And we should all be prepared as to what might go wrong if it goes wrong in Afghanistan.
All right, now, Dr.
And there should
Salma,
be a
you
common
talk about a new generation of Afghan Taliban that understand the perspectives of the 21st century as far as the regional and the global situation is concerned, and how Afghanistan needs to play in order to stabilize itself in the years or the days to come. You also talk of the security challenges, Dr. Saiba. When on one hand, our minister says that the government will not let the Afghan refugees reach the cities this time, do you feel that it's going to be a big challenge for Pakistan as far as the IDPs are concerned, or the possible incursion of Taliban in the guise of IDPs is concerned into Pakistan, God forbid, if things go south?
Absolutely, Umar. You see, the thing is, even if the refugees don't come over, which would be a great idea, but the name of the game is to preemptively prepare. to prepare ourselves in which we are doing. I mean, we are not caught off guard like we were 20 or 30 plus years back. We should be prepared that, God forbid, if things go bad, there could be a possibility of population flow over, which happens in any natural or security calamity. Pakistan has always been that unfortunate term that we use, but actually a strategic depth for Afghanistan in terms of population groups. But then we also have IDPs in Pakistan. We also would have Afghan IDPs on the border areas. And there have been several times when Pakistan has tried to curtail the inflow of Afghan nationals into Pakistan in case of a natural or security based risk. But under the terms of international legislations, even if we are not signatory to the Refugee Convention, we cannot stop refugees who seek protection from coming to our country, or we can't even force them out of the country. Yes, this is a good strategy that we are not going to allow them that type of free for all environment that we did previously under some strategic understanding or narrative that we had internally, and that would actually help us handle this problem far better. But we need to have a very clear cut internal policy as to how we handle these problems. And we already have a pretty high number of Afghan nationals living in Pakistan, both registered, unregistered, as refugees or nationals, which is going to be quite a handful for us to handle. And this is a country which has a lot of good intentions, but we are very small on capital. So the international community really has to help us handle a humanitarian crisis if it happens
When you
come
talk of the
about.
international
Plus the
community,
fact that in times of pandemic, you have to be extremely careful because this is a threat multiplier.
of course, I totally understand where you're coming from. But Dr. Saiba, when it comes to help from friendly countries, do you feel countries such as China, such as Russia, such as the United States of America will be helping Pakistan, God forbid, if any such incursion of IDPs does follow suit, if something happens in Afghanistan for the worst?
Well, you see, besides country commitments, when countries are trying to do humanitarian assistance, there's definitely the UNHCR, which is the main body that is looking after refugees, registered refugees, and then there are other bodies as well who are looking after these humanitarian crises. So those assurances and the amount that these countries individually invest in such institutions would be there, but that entirely depends on how these countries would commit personally when such a crisis happens. Previously, the U.S., if it was investing in Afghan refugees during the 1980s, was by and large for strategic reasons other than humanitarian as well. Would such a spirit return? The US is already trying to kind of break free from the Afghan prison that it had managed to imprison itself in. So it would be very difficult for the US voters to get convinced into they need to reinvest in Afghanistan in helping the refugees out. Although the
All right.
humanitarian plight or the moral plight can always be invoked there. China definitely it would do, and other countries will also try to do something so that they have a strategic footprint in future Afghanistan.
Let's talk about geostrategic relationship between the US and China. I mean, lack of or the future of geostrategic relationship between the two countries or between the US and Russia that have been Cold War, of course, not allies, but of course they were against each other during a Cold War that lasted for quite some time. And then the relationship between the United States of America and Turkey, whereas apparently the United States has told Turkey to take control of the airport once they completely vacate it. And of course, the Afghan Taliban are against it. How do you foresee all of this? Do you feel there's too much of a mishmash as far as these relationships are concerned?
To be very honest, Umar, I would say that from day one, the Afghan project that Americans had unfolded 20 plus years back was a mishmash. And they tried to do as, I mean, they made more mess in Afghanistan than perceivably by any other country. Turkey's current engagement in Afghanistan, controlling the airport, is not anything that has happened overnight. It is there for some time, but it is going to stay there till September. and the Taliban have shown very little interest in Turkey's continuing. Turkey itself wants to appear as a forefront country when it comes to the Islamic countries group, and it is trying to put its best foot forward in helping any of the Islamic countries that require any help. So, if it is asked to put any positive role into this effort, Turkey would continue to do it. But of course, every country, and this is not a criticism on any country's part, including ourselves, every country definitely has strategic and realistic goals when they, even on humanitarian grounds, invest in any other country or help any other country. So, all the countries which are going to be involved as stakeholders, positive in Afghanistan's future, definitely have some role that they perceive or they want to conceive in future Afghan pie. But the fact is that Afghanistan internally would be a very, very precarious and a troubled country. And a lot depends, and unfortunately, Afghanistan's history does not provide you with a lot of hope that a long lasting peace between all the intra Afghan factions would last for too long. So, in case, optimistically speaking, that happens, then I think all the countries stand benefited from that. But then there's this aspect of political economy that really that has driven Afghan conflict and that has driven great powers' interest in Afghanistan, and that is going to be a major deciding factor in peace and conflict as well as stability of Afghanistan in the coming months to years.
Thank you very much, Dr. Salma Malik, to have joined us, Foreign Affairs expert. Dr. Salma Malik talking to us about the changes as far as geostrategy of the region is concerned and the relationship between the US, China, US, Russia, US, India, US, Iran, US, Pakistan, how that is going to board as far as this very rapidly changing situation in Afghanistan is concerned. Let's go to our third segment, ladies and gentlemen, and that concerns the COVID-19 situation in the country, the fourth wave that our Prime Minister, that Mr. Asad Umar, have been talking about. What needs to be done by us as citizens of Pakistan in order to curtail the spread of COVID-19? More in the following report.
Pakistan anticipates clear signs of fourth wave of COVID-19 pandemic since onset of July. Federal Minister for Planning Asad Umar had already warned on Friday of the impending challenge of fourth wave in the country. The chief of the National Command and Operations Center listed myriad reasons resulting in surge of fresh cases, such as poor compliance with SOPs and the spread of the Delta variant. Other possible reasons for spread of virus are purported to be slow pace of vaccination and flawed screening procedures at airports. Earlier, Prime Minister Imran Khan warned the nation that the fourth wave of the novel coronavirus could hit the country if people continue to flout the COVID-induced standard operating procedures, urging the masses to follow precautionary measures to avoid lockdowns. In order to stem the steep rise of this novel mysterious virus, air travel ban on unvaccinated people from 1st August and restrictions on tourism are under consideration. The Delta variant caused widespread deaths in India, and hence any laxity could have serious consequences. As the festivities of Eid al-Adha are just around the corner, citizens have amped up their preparations. In view of health hazards, many are considering buying the animals online. The citizens have been judicially intimated of the fourth wave of COVID-19, so it's crucial to follow the SOPs in order to evade any health catastrophe.
Thank you very much. With that, we come to an end of Newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow. Take care of yourselves. Allah Hafiz.